Welcome everyone to iWay Encounters. Some of you already know iWay, some of you are new to iWay, so I'll give you a quick introduction. iWay is a one-stop knowledge resource on living life with blindness. We've been working in the area of blindness since 2002, and we run a national toll-free helpline, which is manned by visually impaired counselors, and you can call from any part of India, and you will get answers to queries on living life with blindness, whether it's about education, employment, training needs, or general counseling or career guidance. I'm going to say the number, and I will also request my colleague Shabnam to type it out in the window for you. It's 1-800-5320-469. So Shabnam will type that out, and you can connect with us after the session. We hold these sessions every Thursday evening at 4 p.m. You can leave, if you have not already registered through our Google form, you can leave your details in the chat window, and we will add you to our list and notify you for future sessions. Very quickly, house rules, like I requested, please stay on mute and try to turn your video on if possible, if bandwidth allows, if you're comfortable sharing your video. No compulsions there, but it's nice to see faces. We're also going live on Facebook. And please do not unmute your audio during the session while the two speakers, Payal and Preeti, are speaking. You can put your questions in the chat window or press Alt-Y, raise your hand, and I will take note of that. And I promise to ask the questions on your behalf to the speakers. After 30 minutes, we'll open the floor and you can directly unmute and ask your questions. So welcome Payal and Preeti. It's an honor to have you guys. You're celebrities. Look at us, like we are at 127 registrations.
Hi,
you'll have beaten Nasruddin Shah and Ratna Pathak Shah.
It's the best thing. I think everyone relates to talk about food in the kitchen somehow.
Yeah.
I think that has done the trick. That has done the trick, because food is like, everybody's a foodie, and what best to talk about people who can't see. They can sort of quickly zip up what they want and on the table. So I think that's the motivation behind it. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So we quickly. I'm not going to talk much, because literally I should not be talking in front of the two of you. I want this audiences to take the most from this session, and we'll start with the myth busting. So Preeti, let's start with you, and just when did you take the liking for cooking, and when did you just discover this, that you want to do this?
Well, I never discovered I wanted to cook. I was put in the kitchen when I was 9-year-old by my mother. And even I had my disability then also, and that did not deter her. That only made her more adamant that I must learn to do everything in the house, just like any other Punjabi girl. So that when I go to my in-laws, मेरा ससुराल में जाऊंगी तो मेरी बेइज्जती नहीं होगी. I can do everything myself. Never mind if I can see or not. So she put me in the kitchen when I was 6 years old. I didn't have a choice, and somehow, struggling through those times and learning along the way, burning rotis on the fire and everything, and fire to the duster and all of that. She still continued to be there in the kitchen, and she would come and sort of blow the fire out and fix the damage, and then she would say, and I used to say, "Chalo, jaan chuti, I will get out of this," Which wants to stand in the kitchen. I want to get out of it. And then she said, "Okay, carry on now." And I just wonder, I said, what's wrong with this woman? But today I'm really delighted, that she did what she did. So it was 9-year-old.
What about the other people in your family? How did they react to that? I mean, your mother did so, and it's great of her. And not many, in our experience, we've seen a lot of blind children not having the same response from their parents. But what about the other people in the family?
They all supported my mother, and they said that I couldn't go to anyone to complain that look at my mother, what she's doing to me. They all said, my grandmothers, my grandfathers, my uncles, aunties, and they used to give tips. Ki, Acha, oh, you can't do it this way, then do it this way. But you have to. There's no choice. So they just, and they said, never mind. Even हमको दिखता है, but हमारे भी तो हाथ जलते हैं. हमारे, we also get burnt. We also have burnt fingers. We also burn things. So that's the way you learn. So carry on. There's no excuse to get out of it.
Well, that's great. Like I was saying, we've often had people come to us and share that, parents have this apprehension as sighted people. And also parents have a general overprotective attitude towards a disabled child or towards a blind child. So how do you respond to that? Because, it's not just parents, but sometimes what happens is someone's visiting you, or other sighted people will say, why are you putting your child through this? How do you respond to that?
Yes, I would like to respond to this in two ways. First, today, nobody in my family, my mother, my father, and my family is now concerned, and they know that I have been able to manage my life pretty well, cooking, take everything. So they know that they have given me the skills at the right time for me to become independent, which is a very important thing they did. And they succeeded in that. That was a very good thing. And because the parents who are apprehensive only end up, bringing up children who are scared throughout their, childhood, grown-up age. So that fear was taken away from me. So that was very good. The other thing is that there would be visitors who would come and, come to the house, and then, my mom would say, go get water. So, no, the visitors would say, no, don't please get water. We will take it ourselves. So my mother would always tell them that relax, she'll bring water. It's only the problem is she can't see, that's all. She'll get you water, not to worry. So once the water went around, she used to say, Acha beta, now coffee bana do auntie ke liye, chai bana do. No. So when I would bring that coffee successfully and serve it to the guests, and I was very little, about 10, 12, that age, the people over there, their attitude towards me would change, and they would wonder that why are they, feeling sad about it? There's nothing wrong with Preeti.
Yeah.
So attitude actually spilled over and brought in a lot of positivity. And my cooking became famous after that.
Well, that was a fairly young age to become famous, I must say. Thanks to your vision impairment.
Yes, I didn't have a choice, and I'm so delighted. I thank my parents, my family every day. When I want to cook continental, when I want to cook, biryani, when I want to cook anything under the sun, I just have to just go ahead, just like anyone else. I just have to and I can whip it up for myself and for others. So I think it's been a wonderful journey.
Great. Payal, unlike Preeti, you lost your vision later in life.
Yeah. Yes.
So your experience is very different. Let's start from you. Like, at what point, when the switch happened, when you lost your vision, and then when you got into the kitchen first time, how was it for you?
It was very strange, actually, because I lost my sight while I was, barely 22. But I had enough years behind me of training, of studying hotel management, and having done a lot of hands-on cooking to have to really worry about not being able to cook ever, theoretically speaking. But when it came to brass tacks and actually getting down to doing things, it was extremely scary because, being used to doing things visually, to suddenly not be able to see, taking that first step itself is so scary. You don't know where you're putting your foot, because you're so used to seeing everything. Cooking was, of course, probably the farthest thing from my mind at that point in time. There was so much trauma related to everything. So I think it took me quite a while. I wouldn't really today probably not remember it in numbers, but I remember that after, say, about since I was deafblind for almost about 5 months or so, so that everything at that point was out. I was out for treatment. When I came back, say about 6, 8, 9 months later or something like that, pretty early in those days, my mom is the one who identified the fact that, you really don't need to be seen to do various things in the kitchen. Of course, she wasn't anticipating, where I am today, probably at that point in time. But, stuff like cutting vegetables, chopping vegetables and things like that, things that you're used to doing. And you don't, if you actually pay attention, those are not things that you consciously even look at when you're doing, of course, unless you're carving a vegetable and you're, doing a whole lot of things. So you'll very often see people sitting and watching television and cutting vegetables, people sitting and listening to things and cutting vegetables. So in her mind, it connected that I really didn't need to be able to see to do any of that. So those were among the first things. I remember my first foray into the kitchen, and we were in a new house at that point in time, and she familiarized me with the kitchen. And, so among the first things she did is she said, you can wash dishes. That's not a problem at all. I mean, if you need to do that. And then she gave me a bowl of beans. I still remember, that's my most vivid memory, French beans, a whole bowl of cold French beans. And she said, you can string these and start cutting these. So I was not particularly happy about it, because I wasn't happy about much at that point in time. So, but in any case, I realized that it was so simple, because I was used to working both on a chopping board, using a chopping board, and without a chopping board. So this is pretty simple, sitting at the dining table with 2 bowls in your hand. And it was such a fabulous feeling, because at that point in time, you're so used to visually doing things that when I first put my hand in, I've always loved cutting vegetables, because there's a symmetry to it. There's something about cutting vegetables that I find extremely relaxing, strangely enough, and very, very soothing. So I put my hand into this bowl of cold, freshly cut beans. And the first thing I realized is the beauty of the symmetry of the entire thing. I touched every piece, and I saw that, I realized that there were pieces that were cut, some uniformly, some not so uniformly. The smell of the freshly cut beans is what permeated my system as well, because those are just not things you bother with when you're seeing. So actually, that is where I first began. Then, of course, I started doing mainly with this whole cutting and chopping vegetables till my active rehab started. I think 92, I lost my sight, my rehabilitation. It took me about 6 years to, actually put my head together and say, okay, it was time that I went into actual active rehab to sort of get myself together. And my instructor there he came home and he said, okay, let's start using the fire. My mom freaked. She said, fire, why? But that I can do. He said, no, this is all part of the whole thing. And I wanted to get back into action, because I had so much information and knowledge with me. And it's something I enjoy doing. I love cooking, so I didn't want to lose on that, So I cut up everything and got it ready. I still remember I was going to make a bhindi sabzi, and so I had everything in place, and he made me place the kadhai on the gas stove and poured some oil into it. And when it came time to turn on the gas stove, my mother walked out of the kitchen. She couldn't bear it. She just was I think she was just too worried, like either I'm going to burn myself, I'm going to probably kill myself, or burn the house down, or God knows what. So she just walked out of the kitchen. And that was my first thing. I still remember picking the masala box and, taking out the jeera, putting it in, and him telling me how I needed to sort of understand the heat and all of that thing. So it was fabulous. It was such an eye-opener in a strange, pun intended sort of way, but it was quite a wonderful experience. So that was it. I mean, that is where the entire foray began. And after that, there was really no looking back.
So they say cooking is therapeutic. In your case, it was also liberating.
It completely. Oh, totally. And, because two things that I never wanted to do. One was making rotis, that I think every household, at least every North Indian household, I think the girl, when she's about 9th grade, 13, 14, chalo roti banana sikho. Like,
To be goal,
nothing in your life
goal,
is going
goal.
to happen if you can't make goal phulti bhi roti. It's like your life is pointless. So I still remember I used to grumble at that point that I hated making rotis and I didn't want to do that. And making tea, that was another thing. Making tea was another thing because every tea, that was another thing. It never uniform. I mean, everybody wants a different kind of chai.
No, some people say.
So, but then
I have people in the family say that one time you make good cup of tea, you're gone for life. Every time somebody needs tea, they're gonna come and ask you. So don't get that cup of tea right.
That's it. Making a cup of tea is really, even today, I mean, I'm quite unashamed to say that that's the one thing I probably cannot do right even today after all these years of doing various things, making myself a cup of tea. As long as I have a cup of tea, if somebody gives it to me, I'm extremely happy. I would just very happily not have to make a cup of tea.
So cup of tea brings me to this question, Preeti, I'm going to come to you. Cup of tea obviously involves fire. It involves finding the ingredients to go into that cup of tea. And पायल ने भी कहा कि वो जब पहला वो उनका एक्सपीरियंस था, उन्होंने मसाले आइडेंटिफाई करे कैसे. And so we're talking about placing of ingredients here. We're talking about the fire, and we're also talking about pouring that cup of tea.
Right.
So you tell me your experience of making that tea or coffee.
Okay, same. I ditto what Payal says. I dislike making tea because it never comes out the way I want. And khas karke that masala mixed tea, I don't like to make it. So normally I get out of it and I just tell people around. And for me, I discovered a very simple way of making tea. This is just to share it with everybody. My daughter-in-law has given it a name called English tea. So I brew it in the kettle, which is very simple. You just boil water and you stick the tea leaves in and put it under a tea cozy and it brews. And then I use either fresh milk or powder milk straight into the cup and sugar. And then you just pour it from, if it's a decent kettle, the tea leaves normally stay back and you just pour the tea. So, and I like to drink that tea. That tea somehow has more flavor to me. Identifying masalas, there are 2-3 questions that are here which I would like to quickly skim over.
Sure.
If you're a blind person, and this has been taught to me, you see, I grew up blind. So my mother did all the activities that she wanted to teach me with her own eyes closed. And then she would tell me that do it like this. Okay, so that was a wonderful thing that happened. And the kitchen and the home was always set to the way I would know it. Everything had its place and everybody had strict instructions, including my younger brother or relatives or friends or anybody that would come in, my father, not to move the, the boxes, the bottles, the masalas, all of that had their own place. Then she would, of course, teach me to figure out with touch, with smell. And lots of the time when I was learning, and even now, sometimes when I am at a strange place and I have to figure out with the smell, the mirchi gets into the chili gets into your nose and you're sneezing, hachu, and radiant. So everything, identifying masalas is no longer a problem. But one more thing that I would like to share with people who may like to start doing this or get more confident is that you need to be very vocal and very communicative, that please do not shift my things from where in my kitchen or I shall not work. Okay, so there has to be a very clear communication because we don't want to make a mess over there. So that is one thing that I always do even till date. Second thing, you asked about pouring. Yeah. So I always have practiced as a child. I was made to practice with just water, room temperature water, the pouring business. Yeah. And normally one got it right because you don't burn your hands. Once you're practiced with water, then when you have the hot boiling chai or hot water you're trying to pour, you have a system, and everybody develops their own system, I think. If we start practicing, we can develop our own system. And one more thing I want to say over here, that why should I get it perfect? Okay, sometimes it spills out of the cup.
Yeah.
It does. Even today, when I'm thinking of something, I'm not focused on pouring the tea properly. Sometimes it goes around the cup, falls out of the cup. So it's okay. I just clean it up. And if people say, "Itna gir gayi ho," I said, fine, it's okay now, and clean it up. It's okay. And a lot of sighted people also make that same mess.
I do.
So we don't have to feel ashamed or embarrassed so long the work is done and you haven't killed yourself or anyone else, you haven't burnt the house down, it's fine. But the key to this is, first of all, to practice and to be confident. It's okay. It's okay to make a mess. You clean up after the mess, right? You just don't leave it over there. And I have seen sighted people. I've seen people's kitchens. They're so filthy. You can't. I wouldn't want to go in there. The slab is full of all the oil and ghee and atta spread around. The tawa is never washed. So that is hygiene business. But if something falls down on the slab, or while you're pouring from one thing to the other and you manage to spill something, it's okay. I don't think that should be a problem. But practice is the key. The more you practice, the more you observe and make your corrections slowly along the years,
Yeah.
things better. So I hope I have answered your questions.
Yeah. So Payal, Preeti's already told us about this trick for pouring. She practiced a lot with room temperature. What about certain tricks around handling the fire and cutting? Since you like cutting and chopping a lot, any tips and tricks that you would like to share with the audience?
See, pouring, like Preeti said, is a matter of practice. And my counter, despite everything, is every now and then bathed with milk. See, it's all anointed and nicely, bathed with milk and all that. So it's okay. It really doesn't matter. You waste some. But I would also suggest to people that it's good to understand what you're going to use first and foremost. Most importantly, your equipment that you're going to use. You get these very nice saucepans, small saucepans with handles and with a slight lip. There's a slight lip on the rim of the saucepan.
Yeah.
And these are very simple to use because they're well balanced. You also have to see, so what happens often is when people go to buy utensils, they give you these large, heavy handled pans. When you're trying to put the pan on you try and seat the pan on the counter or wherever it is, and it'll tip.
Yeah.
Invariably, it's most annoying, and it makes you wonder what is the point of it. But if you look at it later, when you put something in it, what you need to do definitely when you're going to buy something like that is, while you're there, ask them if they can pour some water in it for you to be able to see whether it tips or not, because some of them tip despite water, despite something being in it. Now that is a problem, because when it goes onto the gas stove and it tips, you won't have an idea that it is happening. So it's extremely important. So use those kind of utensils wherein you're safe, as in your finger doesn't burn because you have a very good handle to hold, and it's long enough, but at the same time not so heavy that it's going to give you trouble when you're trying to pour it. So there has to be some sort of a symmetry there. And also, when I see a lot of people want to sort of pour things from a larger utensil, for instance, let's say these milk, invariably all of us buy milk and boil milk in larger containers, and then we want to put them into, let's say, a smaller container, or we want to get a glass of milk out of it or something like that. So in these cases, it's very easy to either use a nice hollow round spoon, one of those dal spoons that you have, like a katchi, a long one. So it's good to use something like that, because you can very easily take milk out of that into something smaller.
Yeah.
And always keep a utensil under
instead of lifting and pouring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or then you get also these little small like cups, handles, stainless steel ones. If anybody remembers, or if everybody's seen, a milkman has this kind of
Yeah.
a little, funnel kind of a thing. It looks like
Yeah.
that. You can use one of those as well, and very easily, see, you can use anything to take milk out. If it's not kachchi, if you're happier with using a cup, a handle, do that. The only thing is that please ensure that whatever you're dipping into the milk is absolutely clean, because your milk can get spoiled otherwise. So dip it in. I mean, it's yours. As long as your hygiene is in place and you're doing things in place, it's perfectly all right. You don't have to follow any written rules. You make your rules in the kitchen for yourself, whatever works. That is the important, because the minute somebody starts telling you, oh, but this is the wrong way, aisa kyun kiya, aisa nahi karna tha, and things like that, it automatically, the first thing that happens is it throws you and it disorients you. So you have to very clearly, apart from what Preeti said about not moving things around, another thing is you tell people very clearly, when I'm working in the kitchen, if you have something to say to me, say it to me before I start cooking, or if you have any instructions to give me, don't come at the back and don't do any backseat driving. Okay, don't do any proxy cooking. I can do without that. Let me do. If there is a problem, I will ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you have to establish that that space for yourself, that ownership, that this space for this point in time is mine, and I will do it my way. And if there's a problem, I'll ask you, which is something you should do. Don't ever act smart in the kitchen. Don't think you know everything. If you're stuck somewhere, if you have a strange smell coming out of somewhere that you don't understand, or if there's something happening that doesn't, please immediately call for help. Ask somebody who's sighted at home, or whatever it is. If nobody's at home, call someone. First thing, if you're working with the gas and something's happening that you don't understand, first thing, turn the fire off. That's your first job to do. Turn your fire off, and then do whatever else you have to, because that is where the danger lies. You don't know what is happening over there. So these are very, very important things, and don't feel ashamed to seek help.
That's true. I think, Preeti, you were also mentioning that yesterday.
Yes.
It's all right to seek help, and it's all right to not have a perfect cooking.
But tell me which human being is on this earth doesn't require help in some form or the other, or doesn't seek help at some time or the other. So it's the kind of help that one requires. One just has to reach out, and then we can also be of help to others. So I think it's help. We're social animals, so we need to help. I never think twice to even reach out to my neighbor. If there's nobody at home, I just open the door and just scream, hey, dekho kya ho raha hai mere ghar mein, or just bangan mein keeda hai ki nahi, would you like to take a look at it? So
you're right. It's a two-way street, right? I mean, sometimes they'll need help, sometimes you'll need help, and it'll be different kind of help.
Sure, and they'll come, in the middle of the evening and say, "Oh, can you help me with my, with my this thing? I can't go to the market. Do you think you can lend me some milk tonight?" So it's okay. So helping each other, that's what needs to be done. And why should a blind person, child, or a young person, old person, why should we feel ashamed of something that is not our fault? It's the way we have. We're individuals. So if I can't see, we can't see it. We can't see. I haven't gone and made that happen.
Yeah.
It's not an excuse. It's just the way I am. And if I'm trying to get around it, and if I need a little bit of support, it's fine. Everybody needs support. So that is very important. As Payal very rightly said, go seek, find help. If you act too smart, then there is trouble. And this happens for sighted cooks as well.
Yes. Yes.
And we're living in the world of technology today. We all have smartphones. We all have, how long does it take to make a video call to somebody and just show it to them? Plus, of course, we have the apps like Seeing AI and Be My Eyes and all of that. So there's so much available. So it's a matter of allowing yourself and convincing your family that you are good to go, and getting down to it. That's
Sure.
it.
Glad you brought up technology, Payal, and you also brought up the idea of picking the right pan, saucepan, etc. So, any other tips on appliances from you guys on, what to use and what not to use in the kitchen if there's new accessible cookware anywhere? Because we do get questions from people asking whether a microwave is accessible, which one is a good brand to buy, etc., etc. So, what are your experiences? You can take it one after the other. That question.
There are a lot of cookware, a lot of things that we use. See, at the end of the day, universal design, unfortunately, is still not. It's still a distant dream for most of us when it comes to day-to-day appliances and utensils and things like that. But having said that, there's a lot of workarounds that are available that we make for ourselves on our own. So first aspect that you need to understand is the safety. I keep saying this safety again and again because it's extremely important. You have to secondly understand the equipment you're using. Most commonly used in most households around us are things like a microwave oven, a mixer grinder, let's say a blender in some places, a hand blender. There are toasters. So these are pretty much regular things that can be very easily oven toaster grillers in some other cases. So these are pretty much standardized. There's nothing more to it. Now, you could perhaps look for a microwave that has buttons instead of, they all have displays now, of course, digital displays, all of them have. But there are some, like I recently picked up a Samsung for myself. Unfortunately, don't remember the model number, but last year I picked it up and that has buttons very clearly.
Sure.
It's very easy. It's very easy because the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do your, you need to know your switch on off and you need to know your timer. That's more or less it. But then if it goes one step further, now it has a deodorizer, it has some other kind of cleanser, it has various other such settings which you can understand because there are buttons. So you need someone to basically walk you through most of those things. So those are pretty much standard. And if you have trouble, like if you have a microwave, and let's face it, these are things that you can't keep going out and buying just because there's a new one available that's better than what you have. You can't, it's not something that you can just say, it's not like buying vegetables where you say, okay, I'm going to junk this batch, it's not nice, and I'm going to get another. When you buy it, and sometimes when we start in our kitchens, we also have to remember a lot of us are living with parents, living with other families, girls who are getting married and going into other homes, have to adapt to those environments. Okay, so they're going into an already established home and things like that, where things are already there. So how do you understand? You have to get your orientation in place. Whoever is there with you, you need to tell them that you're going to be using this. This is how you need to use things. And this is what you are going to do to make it comfortable. Microwave oven with displays, just get your on and off together, your, your 30-second timer in place and just pick 2 bindis over there or pick bump-ons.
Yes, bindis are the ones that I've always used and they work
absolutely.
Also on my washing machine, bindis have done great.
Absolutely. And you get bump-ons now. So many agencies sell all those kind of things. So you can use one of those and you have to create your own space. And Mixies are pretty user-friendly in any case. So that's blenders and mixers and all are usually not a problem. Ovens are a little bit of a problem. Again, for those that are enthusiastic about, using an oven and things like that, that can be a little bit of a challenge. But like I said, once you understand the equipment that you're using, you can create your own accessibility around it and probably work it better than anybody else. There are those multi-purpose kettles. There are very easily handled vegetable choppers, electrical vegetable choppers. Plus, there are those manual choppers that you have, those boxes with blades on top where you put a vegetable and just hit the lid down and the thing gets chopped. So there are a whole lot of, things available in the market. Places like Big Bazaar and all of them, I remember when we did the accessibility, cooking without looking workshops with them, we had, identified a whole lot of equipment that could be used. So there, also stuff like your, the induction stove that a lot of people use. So there are a lot of Prestige has some interesting things. Philips has some interesting things, which are very simple. They're just buttons and they're just those basic buttons that you need to use. If you want to go one step further, then once you're okay with this basic stuff, then go for it. I mean, there shouldn't be any reason why it should stop you. But don't aspire straight away to walk into this most fabulous gadget that is going to do everything for you. It's not happening.
It's
No.
not Alexa. Alexa will not cook for you.
Not for a while, at least.
Preeti, both of you actually, Payal and Preeti, you mentioned that how your parents, your mother especially, was telling you to do things, and you've had more people in the family, Preeti, because you were blind from an earlier age, give you tips and tricks and tell you ye roti jali hai, gol nahi hai, whatever, and then also recipes get passed down, right, from the family. We have a lot of people who are visually impaired who grow up in institutions. They don't have the benefit of that guidance of the family.
Right.
So yes, they do undergo this basic cooking rehab kind of a training thing, but they have different challenges. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, definitely, and that goes also for the sighted youngster today.
Yes.
Even they don't want to. That's another issue.
Yeah.
And this happens, you see, when you're growing up in an institution, or when you're not growing up completely within a family. So obviously, there's a lot of things you miss. For example, if you're living you're growing up with your parents, or if you're in a joint family, somebody or the other will continue to hand you down a lot of stuff. Let me also tell you that my rotis still don't come right. I hate my own rotis, but we're still alive and kicking. So accept those faults. I just wanted to say that accept the faults, like I always say that with nothing is 100%. Nobody is 100%, and I can guarantee you a lot of my sighted friends and a lot of my sighted colleagues also have the same problem with rotis, right? So that is a issue that can be learned with practice, and I make them every day. I still don't get them right. One roti comes right, like it's a celebration. Having that attitude has to be there. That attitude has to be there, that I want to do it myself. I need to do it myself. And especially it came up during the lockdown that people were a lot of visually impaired people were living by themselves, and they had to fend for themselves. And then that is where we started this cooking business, and Payal is doing tremendous work on that. And what happens is that definitely these children, as they grow up, first of all, they don't have the basic understanding that how to, from the foundations, how to learn and handle the kitchen, how to learn, and especially Payal said safety, what are the safety norms. So all of that they miss. So I think they need to reach out step by step to something. And today there's a very wonderful platform which is called the social media, especially the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of help available, and we should go in for that. And please ask. Definitely they miss a lot. They definitely miss a lot. And a lot of young girls tell us that our parents allow us to do everything but touch the fire. But somebody needs to teach them, and they need to let them not experiment all on their own. I think it's important that there should be a platform which we're trying to create, and I think all of us are together trying to create that. Step by step, we can guide them, encourage the young people that this is exactly how you need to move forward. Use your other senses that are working perfectly in doing all the kitchen work. And as you just heard from both of us, that it is not difficult. It is really not difficult. It's only the matter of figuring out, discovering what you're comfortable with, how you would like to go ahead with it, and how much interest and how much hard work are you willing to put into this. And once you do that, I think you would be perfect. And One more thing I would like to add over here, there will be a lot of discouragement from your environment, from people, from friends, from family. No, 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 I'll do this for you. Why do you have to do it? But then again, we are stuck. If we are not going to do that, we need to make it clear to the other person that, look, I need to do this myself, and I need to learn this myself so that one day I'm not stuck. Swiggy doesn't happen in lockdowns, right? Have to do it ourselves. And I think it's very empowering. It builds our confidence. Give
Yeah.
me are able to take care of our families and of my own tummy. So it's very important for us to, first of all, have that attitude that I want to learn. Secondly, I don't have to be 100% perfect in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It will take time. Let us be very clear on that, that every new activity anybody learns. Again, I'm not talking about only the visually impaired. Koi bhi kuch seekhega, so it takes time. You have to go step by step. You will make mistakes.
Okay, since you mentioned social media there, and we talked about Payal doing a fantastic job, I'm going to take a quick pause and play a very interesting jingle that Payal and team have come up with. And then,
Absolutely.
Payal, we are going to come back and you tell us about your YouTube channel. How did you come about starting?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to just give me a second. I'm going to share screen. I hope the Shabnam, can you tell me if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to play it. I hope the audio is clear too. रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम सब्जी दाल मसाले इन सबको टटोले हम रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम सब्जी दाल मसाले इन सबको टटोले हम रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम कितने चावल कितनी दाल कैसे बनाए डोसा कमाल घी लेना है या तेल किसके संग है किसका मेल कौन सा मसाला कितना चुने प्याज टमाटर को कितना भुने कुकर ले या ले कढ़ाई बर्तन कड़छी की है ये लड़ाई प्यूरे करें या फिर चॉप डाइसिंग स्लाइसिंग या फिर इन सारे सवालों का जवाब आपको एक ही जगह मिलेगा From organizing to preparing to cooking. Now stop worrying and start listening. रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम 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 All right, Payal.
It makes me smile every time I listen to it and makes me want to do a little jiggles. It's so nicely made.
I was stomping my feet. I was enjoying the tempo.
Yeah, so that's precisely the mood you have to be in when you're in the kitchen.
Yeah. So tell us about your channel.
So Rasoi Ke Rahasya was actually something that came about as a result of the lockdown, really, because there were many conversations happening around the frantic, nature of things when the lockdown actually happened, whether it was buying vegetables, whether it was storing things. A lot of people were stuck wherever they were, which was out of home, alone, learning to do things, needing to rethink and regroup. So it started there with some conversations around some webinars and things like that I was invited to speak at. Then there's a group that exists that already existed, which I wasn't at that point a part of, called the Blind Friendly Cooking Group, I think started by Avinash Shahi on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So in just general conversations with my friend Shireen, who's also responsible for this particular jingle. So she said that she was part of there, and she said, maybe you'll be able to do things with people over there. Why don't you sort of join the group and help it? Conversation started. We started talking about it, and then I realized that I didn't want to do recipes and things like that, because there were many recipes. There are millions available everywhere. What I wanted to do was teach people how to do things right.
Yeah.
To understand, to use my knowledge, both my practical knowledge and my education, and put it in place in one-stop space, which taught people how to get to those recipes accessibly and in the right way. So those conversations led to Rasoi Ke Rahasya happening, because I was just putting, recording and sharing it over there. And then others said that, no, we must archive this because this is so much information and whatever. Then things just kept happening. YouTube happened. Then over there, we said that, okay, since we're going to do this twice a week, I was sharing it twice a week at that point, and I said twice a week, then let's give it a name. Then I said, okay, Rasoi Ke Rahasya, since we're talking about unraveling the secrets of the kitchen, so let it be Rasoi Ke Rahasya. So it became bilingual, English and Hindi, morphing more into Hindi than English, because the audience that was asking for it ended up, being more Hindi speaking people who were more comfortable. So that it just took on a life of its own. I thought I'll do a few episodes and it would be the end of it. But I realized that as I started doing things, then there were so many little aspects, like, storage, and how would you store, and how would you grade your spices and your lentils and your dal and your whatever else, your rice, and where would you keep things? How would you tell one thing from another? What is the best way of organizing it? Your refrigerator, picking vegetables, fruit, and processing them. Because if you remember at that point, things were not easily available for a period of time. So we needed to make the best of, and deliveries were not easy. So we had to make the best of what was coming to us at that point in time, process and store until the next delivery came.
Yeah.
So it just took on a life of its own, and it just went on and on and on. And then we ended up with 13 episodes. I did glossaries. So then there were people ordering Big Basket and Grofers and various other such places. Then there were names of vegetables that were written in English and that people didn't know, spices that people didn't know. So I created Hindi English glossaries of spices, of vegetable, of fruit.
Yeah.
And so that people found it easier to understand in their own languages and were able to identify what they needed to buy and how. So that's what happened. 13 episodes of simply orientation that became one entire series and one entire playlist. And then recently, then there was a little bit of a pause because I was unwell. So there was a pause, and then in November, we decided to start putting this on podcast as well. So because what is happening is that a lot of people have an expectation of seeing videos when it came to, you say YouTube and they say video nahi hai. So, and for me, it truly didn't make a difference to me that, there was no video, because it was eventually for us, people with vision impairment, to whom a clear instruction given in audio made more sense. So I did just that, and we started putting it up on podcast. Now, recently, we've started the second season, which is about methods of cooking. And I'm dealing with methods of cooking. We've done, I think, 4 episodes already. This is weekly once now. And it gets uploaded both on YouTube as well as on Anchor on the podcast. So I'm hoping to be able to create a community around it and have people, engage in conversations. But somehow I've not been able to get people to move out of WhatsApp conversations and actually get out there. They have so much to say, about it. So I tell them, why don't you write it on Facebook, or why don't you put it on YouTube, or somewhere where, it helps other people as well.
The audience can access it. Yes. Yes.
It will happen. It will happen as we go along, because
I suppose so. See, it's all like from the previous season to now. And again, people somehow relate more to YouTube than they do to a podcast even now, even in the country. So I think it's a process, and I'm expecting it to go a long way, because I'm just dealing with, so far I'm dealing with moist heat cooking. So basically all the water-based cooking methods is what I'm dealing with. Then I'm going to do dry heat, then I'm going to do oil. Then I'm going to go full throttle into pick up one thing like baking and do a whole series on simply on baking. So that's the plan, with lots of conversations, lots of expert opinions. I'm planning to bring in experts and talk to them about industry experience and things like that. So there are many plans. I hope the audience is going to be there to support it and enjoy it as well.
It is just super wonderful. I think, Payal, you're creating something for generations to come. And this has never happened before. And for a blind person, from my point of view, I think you're doing a huge service to this community, which was never thought of. So all the very best.
Thanks so much. I'm having a blast. I'm enjoying myself. I feel like I'm doing exams again, because when I'm researching something and trying to remember everything to put it all down and things, I feel like I've gone back to college and I'm doing exams and writing assignments.
You know, to be honest, Payal and Preeti, I mean, I have so many more questions that still remain unanswered that I had planned for this session, but it won't be fair if we don't take audience questions. So I'm going to stop here and open the floor for questions.